Teeth can self-repair with a special impregnating liquid. Bacteria actually do not cause cavities. Grains in their pure form are dangerous, not only for teeth, but for the whole body. Toothpastes with fluoride actually don't heal, they harm. All this sounds like some kind of nonsense, you might say, and you would be wrong. In this documentary, we will look at the most shocking facts about modern dentistry. And we will start, of course, from the very beginning, with how the cruel lady named Evolution dealt with the teeth of animals and humans. And this is really very interesting. Look at these teeth. It's just a work of art, isn't it? They belong to crab-eater seals, but despite their name, they don't eat crabs. After all, these amazing teeth, you could say a dentist's dream, are needed for other food. The main prey of the crab-eater seal is Antarctic krill. These are small crustaceans that look like shrimp, up to 6 centimeters long. The seal's teeth act as a filter. The crab-eater searches for clusters of krill, swims among the crustaceans with its mouth open, and then strains the water. This shape of the side teeth is called festooned cusped. When the jaws close, openings remain through which water exits the mouth cavity. By the way, many other seals have a similar tooth structure, even such a powerful predator as the sea leopard. Despite the fact that this animal mainly feeds on relatively large prey, penguins and other seals, yes, even the crab-eater seal, which often has scars on its body from their attacks. Nevertheless, sometimes sea leopards also eat small prey, the same krill, in the same way, by straining it through these teeth. In general, there are many amazing teeth in nature. For example, this is what the teeth of the pacu, a type of freshwater ray-finned fish, look like. Some species of moray eels have an additional set of jaws that emerges from their throat. Look, it looks just like in Ridley Scott's Alien movies. It seems that when it comes to jaws, he took inspiration specifically from moray eels. This is what a leatherback turtle's mouth looks like, a scene straight from a horror movie. Interestingly, in a way, the mouth of lampreys is similar to this. Lampreys attach themselves to fish and then feed on their blood and flesh. It's hard to call them pleasant creatures. Their preoral funnel is covered with horny teeth. There's even a large tooth on the tongue. It's hard to imagine what a fish feels when such a monster leech latches on at full force and releases digestive juices into the victim's body, only to then suck in the partially digested mass. And this is what the teeth of an elephant look like. One such tooth can weigh up to 9 kilograms. This is what the teeth of a snail look like. It has about 25,000 of them. During observations, you can notice how quickly they deal with hard food. The tongue, on which a chitinous ribbon with such tiny teeth is located, simply grinds up the food. Because of this, the small teeth wear down very quickly. However, for snails, this is not a problem. The teeth regenerate quickly, and new ones grow back. Snails. This kind of regeneration can be compared to sharks or even piranhas. Their teeth are not replaced one by one, but in whole sections of their jaws. Actually, a lot of interesting things are happening at the bottom of the ocean. We have a separate episode about this. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It'll be interesting. And since we're back to water, let's take a look at these teeth. Who do you think they belong to? These are the teeth of an ancient whale. It had sharp front teeth for hunting large prey, and rather unusual back teeth, which, according to scientists, served the same purpose as those of the crab-eater seal. They created narrow gaps for filtering water, so they could feed on those who couldn't pass through these gaps. But evolutionary biologists have a big problem with this question. How exactly did whales evolve from hoofed land mammals the size of a cat into oceanic giants? Even this fossilized skull doesn't reveal much. Not even what the step-by-step picture from cat to whale looked like, but at least how baleen blue whales actually came to be. Then they developed this special filter in their mouths, which simply can't be compared to any kind of teeth. This so-called baleen is made of keratin, the same material our fingernails are made of. The main theory was that whales first gradually lost all their teeth, and only then developed a filtration system in their place. Why didn't a species of shark evolve to filter water, similar to how some whales filter water for food? And why do they still hunt in the old way with their serrated teeth, which, by the way, are constantly renewed throughout their lives? And now let's think about the following. Maybe, just like it once was for whales or humans, from an evolutionary point of view, teeth are an atavism. Quite a heretical thought, isn't it? To understand that this isn't just a joke, it's enough to look at the dentistry of the future. For now, these are devices like 3D scanners, digital modeling of orthodontic processes, photopolymer 3D printers, and automated milling machines. Already now, dentists are making braces like these not just for teeth, but for the entire face. 3D printing with metal, colored parts printed using laser sintering from powdered titanium, customized for each patient, and software for designing the bite. All of this already allows us to model and reconstruct the skull from scratch. But what will happen later, say, in 10 or 15 years? Genetically engineered microbes for oral colonization, a dental cavity vaccine, or maybe we won't need teeth at all in the future. It is believed that our jaws are shrinking in size as part of the evolutionary process. The transition to thermally processed, easy-to-chew food led to a gradual reduction in the size of the facial skeleton. Another factor that may have played a role in this process could be the optimization of bone and muscle structures for the development of a more advanced speech apparatus. It's hard to imagine how easily I would be able to pronounce all these words if I looked even a little bit like a Neanderthal. But judging by the large musculature and the shape of such jaws, one could assume that the subtle nuances of speech in modern languages would have been difficult for these charming faces. Modern studies show that almost all of us have bite anomalies. In different regions of Russia, their frequency ranges from 37 to 90%. At the same time, in rural areas where orthodontic care is either not provided or is provided with a delay, the proportion of such anomalies exceeds 80%. So, does it turn out that we are now in a transitional process of evolution? A normal species with stable morphology should not exhibit such a number of developmental problems, especially if you consider that a large number of anomalies in rural areas is a basic biological scenario without medical intervention. The main prevailing pathology is the narrowing of the dental arches. That is, the process of jaw reduction is underway, but the proportional reduction in the number of teeth is significantly lagging behind. However, already up to 5 to 8% of people are born without the buds of permanent teeth. Commonly, wisdom teeth, upper second premolars, or upper lateral incisors are affected. In certain situations with a symmetrical anomaly, this can compensate for insufficient jaw growth and contribute to the formation of a physiological bite. In a few hundred years, facial features resembling a bird-like appearance with an underdeveloped lower jaw, similar to actor Leo Bill's dental jaw anomaly, will become the standard due to ongoing evolutionary changes. But jokes aside, it's not just about the teeth, it's even in the eyes of this funny picture. Let's look at an interesting paradox from modern Wikipedia. As the main cause of myopia, it lists an elongated eyeball, and it also says that myopia is determined by heredity, that as a child grows, their eyeball grows as well, gradually increasing in length. By the age of 20 to 25, growth stops and myopia stabilizes. And attention, this process is not affected by external factors such as poor lighting, gadgets, or visual strain. It's great, of course, that it doesn't depend on gadgets. But just a little lower, a couple of sentences later, there's a reference that by the year 2050, about half of the Earth's population will have myopic refraction. At the same time, almost 1 billion of them will have myopia. That is, high-degree nearsightedness. So it turns out that in 30 years, which in terms of evolution isn't even a margin of error, half of the human population will become nearsighted. This is without considering gadgets, strain, and poor lighting. However, things could turn out differently, or even the opposite. In about 30 to 50 years, humanity will begin its own selection of embryos, when children will only be born with the correct desired genome. In 100 to 150 years, active deactivation of the genome with predictable results will become the norm, and this can no longer be called evolution. This is anything: genetic engineering, engineering design, eugenics, but definitely not evolution. Then what can we say about bird-like faces and nearsighted eyes? If classic toothy jaws and sharp eyes become popular in society, then that's exactly the kind of children bioengineers will create, isn't it? Well, at the very least, for those who have the money for such genetic correction. For example, you can look at the breast size of modern celebrities, which is adjusted in the desired direction for a certain amount of money. But from the soft and pleasant parts of the human body, let's move again to the hard teeth. And once again, let's take a look at modern technologies. Even now, three-dimensional images from a computer tomography help to accurately assess the condition of teeth, roots, and soft tissues in the oral cavity. The doctor can see hidden features or defects deep inside the jawbone in the smallest detail. But scientists went further and connected neural networks to the analysis. They are capable of programmatically analyzing computed tomography scans and digital impressions from an intraoral scanner together or separately, and detecting the slightest pathologies with 98% accuracy. For example, the program, developed by Russian dentists, creates a complete report on the uploaded computed tomography scans and impressions in just 5 minutes, and provides a breakdown for each tooth, signs of pathologies, crowns, fillings, implants, and much more. In addition to separate programs like this, there are now tomographs with a built-in neural network. You don't need to run the obtained images through a separate program. The analysis appears immediately along with the image. Artificial intelligence compares the results with a vast database of other clinical cases, analyzes the detected problems, and helps plan treatment. What the human eye might miss, the neural network's eye won't overlook. So, even at this stage of diagnostics, the tiniest errors are eliminated. For example, each of us has heard that bacteria cause cavities. But what about, for example, the controversial fact that white sugar is actually antibacterial? After all, microorganisms die in a 20% sugar solution. Logically, a diet high in sugar should have led to the destruction of bacteria. What's wrong with that? The fundamental theory of modern dentistry was established in 1893 by Dr. Miller. He discovered that if you put an extracted tooth into a fermenting mixture of bread and saliva, something similar to cavities would appear on the tooth. He suggested that acids produced by microorganisms in the mouth decompose tooth tissue. However, Dr. Miller himself never believed that bacteria were the cause of cavities. He rather believed that bacteria and the acid they produce participate in the process of tooth destruction. But most importantly, he believed that a strong tooth cannot be destroyed. Dr. Miller also wrote that the invasion of microorganisms is always preceded by a decrease in the amount of mineral salts. Simply put, first the tooth loses minerals, and only then can microorganisms cause harm. And teeth lose minerals as a result of improper nutrition. Dentists distorted Dr. Miller's theory by removing the most important information. It is now believed that cavities occur when products containing carbohydrates, sugars, and starches, such as soft drinks, raisins, cakes, and candies, often remain on the teeth. They create a favorable environment for bacteria, which, as a result of their activity, produce acids. Over time, these acids destroy the tooth enamel and lead to the formation of cavities. The difference between Dr. Miller's theory, proposed in 1883, and the theory supported by dentists today is that the protection of teeth from decay is ensured by the density and structure of the tooth tissue. Whereas today, dentists are taught that only bacteria are the cause of cavities. Dentists have convinced the whole world that cavities are mostly not related to nutrition, except for the fact that food sticks to the teeth. Here's another fact that's little known to the average person. It turns out that dental lymph, a special restorative fluid, circulates through the stone-like impenetrable teeth. It moves from the inside out through microscopic channels inside the teeth, which are also called dentin tubules. When the hypothalamus sends a signal to the salivary glands, they begin to secrete perotin, which stimulates the movement of dental lymph, rich in minerals, through the microscopic channels inside the teeth. This fluid cleanses the tooth tissue and remineralizes it. When we consume products that cause cavities, the hypothalamus stops stimulating the secretion of perotin, which helps circulate the dental, remineralizing, that is, restorative fluid for tooth enamel. Over time, a delay in the production of dental lymph leads to the destruction of teeth. The fact that the parotid salivary glands are responsible for the mineralization of teeth explains why some people are not susceptible to cavities even with relatively poor nutrition. They are born with very healthy parotid salivary glands. When, under the command of the parotid salivary glands, the flow of dental fluid begins to move in the opposite direction, usually as a result of poor nutrition, food particles, saliva, and other substances are drawn through the tubules inside the tooth. Over time, the pulp becomes inflamed, and the destruction spreads to the enamel. This process of decay is associated with the loss of several key minerals: magnesium, copper, iron, and manganese. All these elements are actively involved in cellular metabolism and are necessary for the production of energy, which ensures the movement of cleansing fluid through the dentin tubules. It should be noted that phytic acid, which is found in grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, has the ability to block the absorption of all these extremely important minerals. And here we come to another fact that is surprising for many. Grains are dangerous for teeth if plant toxins are not removed. Supporters of natural nutrition have embraced the idea that whole grains are healthier for us, and they are promoting this idea among the population. However, it is always overlooked that without thorough preliminary processing of grains and without adding supplementary substances to the diet, serious diseases can occur. For example, to induce scurvy in guinea pigs, they were fed almost exclusively with bran and oats. Another diet that caused scurvy included oats, barley, corn, and soybean flour. A diet consisting exclusively of oats killed the guinea pigs in just 24 days. Because of scurvy, the same diet caused serious problems with teeth and gums. Research on scurvy eventually led to the discovery of the vitamin that prevents this disease, which we know as vitamin C. Adding it to the diet of guinea pigs in the form of raw cabbage or orange juice leads to a complete cure of scurvy. But a lack of vitamin C is not the main cause of the development of scurvy. Vitamin C, rather, performs a protective function against numerous plant toxins, as well as lectins and phytic acid, which hinder the absorption of nutrients. Phytic acid is a storage form of phosphorus in many parts of plants, especially in the bran of grains and other seeds. A significant amount of phytic acid is found in grains, nuts, legumes, seeds, and some tubers. The phosphorus in phytic acid is contained within molecules that resemble snowflakes in shape. This form of phosphorus is not fully bioavailable to humans. In addition to phosphorus, phytic acid molecules also bind other minerals, particularly calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc, making them unavailable as well. However, the negative effects of phytic acid can be significantly reduced with the help of vitamin C. Its addition to the diet can counteract the blocking effect of phytic acid on iron. All this information serves as convincing evidence that such symptoms of scurvy as soft, loose gums leading to tooth loss are the result of a deficiency of vitamin C and an excess of grains and other foods containing phytic acid. Interestingly, when rats and dogs were put on a diet that leads to the development of scurvy, they did not develop scurvy, but another disease: rickets. It is known for causing severe bowing of the legs in children. Other symptoms of rickets include muscle weakness, painful or sensitive bones, problems with skeletal formation, and tooth decay. The diet that caused the most severe form of rickets consisted mostly of whole grains, such as whole wheat, whole corn, and wheat gluten. It has been established that rickets is a disease associated with impaired metabolism of calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin D. One study noted that the number of cases of rickets dropped sharply in June. It is known that butter with a high content of vitamin K2 can prevent the development of rickets. A. June butter, made from the milk of cows that grazed on fresh green grass, contains the maximum amount of vitamin K2. Thus, whole grains are responsible for two scenarios. They cause scurvy when there is a deficiency of vitamin C, and rickets when there is a deficiency of vitamin D. But how can that be? After all of this is considered the healthiest food in the human diet. How did our ancestors eat grain and stay healthy? After all, most of human history is the history of the evolution of agriculture, in which grains hold the top place. There are some very interesting studies on this subject. For example, the indigenous people of Switzerland, who were known for their almost absolute resistance to tooth decay, understood this principle and ate rye bread with cheese and milk in a single meal. A similar combination of bread with dairy products, rich in calcium and vitamin C, protected them from residual grain toxins that were not destroyed by the complex multi-stage processing, namely grinding, sifting, fermentation, baking, and aging. The simultaneous consumption of flour and dairy products is practiced not only in high-altitude alpine villages. In Africa, there is a traditional dish made from wheat, and its preparation is a very labor-intensive process in order to make the wheat safe for consumption. First, the wheat is boiled, dried, and then ground. The grain is completely cleaned of its husk. In another container, the milk is fermented. After that, the milk and wheat ferment together for 24 to 48 hours. And finally, they are dried for storage. In almost all cultures around the world, grain undergoes one form or another of very complex, multi-stage processing. The island Scots were healthy, unlike the inhabitants of more modern areas of Scotland, where they also ate oat products, but still suffered from rickets. The difference between these two groups of people who consumed oats was the presence or absence of fat-soluble vitamins in their diet and in the methods of preparing oat dishes. After the harvest, the oats were stored outside, and they partially sprouted for several days or weeks under the rain and sun. The husks were collected and fermented for a week or longer. This fermented liquid could be used as a starter culture enriched with enzymes for fermenting oats. The grains were fermented from 12 hours to 1 week. It is not entirely clear whether the oats were used whole or after preliminary removal of the bran. There is also no detailed information about how the oat dishes themselves were prepared. But it is important that the whole grains underwent a complex multi-stage processing to neutralize the plant toxins contained in them. In addition to the above, the diet was very rich in minerals and fat-soluble vitamins A and D, which came from sea fish and mollusks. It turns out that oats served as a useful staple food for these peoples only when special land processing methods, thorough preparation, and a large amount of minerals and fat-soluble vitamins in the diet were combined. This is not conspiracy theorists' nonsense. 10 years of Dr. Weston Price's life with indigenous Aboriginal peoples of different countries proved that dental health does not depend on heredity and sweets, but that the absence or presence of cavities reflects the condition of the body as a whole. The American dentist traveled to the most isolated corners of our planet to study the teeth of populations untouched by civilization. Dr. Price studied Eskimos living in their traditional conditions, Indian tribes, Australian Aborigines, New Zealand Maori, representatives of indigenous African tribes, and residents of the Loetchental Valley in Switzerland. In every isolated region the dentist visited, he found tribes and villages where all the inhabitants were practically perfect. In addition to overall health, they did not suffer from dental caries, and orthodontic problems such as crowded or crooked teeth were completely absent. Weston Price endlessly photographed the white-toothed smiles of these people, noting that they were full of health, vigor, and optimism. Even in those cases when they had to live in extremely harsh conditions, they had no doctors or dentists because they did not need them. All this was only possible with their traditional diet, rich in essential nutrients. However, as soon as any of them settled closer to civilization and began to eat the food of white people, their teeth began to decay instantly. During his research, Dr. Price discovered that the healthiest people were those who received fat-soluble activators from a variety of fresh dairy products. These included the Swiss from the high Alps, Arabs who consumed camel's milk, and Asian groups who lived on sheep's milk. In second place were those who ate the internal organs of animals and the eggs of domestic and wild birds. These included the Native Americans of the far north and the tribes of the Andes. Next in the ranking are those who ate a variety of sea creatures, small animals, and insects. Dr. Price noted that throughout all his research, he never once encountered a single group of people who had strong health and good teeth, while eating exclusively plant-based foods. All these peoples consumed a lot of fermented foods and spices. Seeds, grains, and nuts were always soaked, sprouted, fermented, or pickled to neutralize tannins and phytic acid. The problem with modern people is that they don't feel hunger for minerals and vitamins, only for warmth and energy. In terms of calories, our diet may not be inferior to the foods of the peoples studied by the doctor, but in terms of fat-soluble activators that allow vitamins and minerals to be absorbed, it definitely falls short. Plus, over the last 2 centuries, soil quality has greatly deteriorated. Modern farmers, in order to survive, are forced to use pesticides, herbicides, and mechanization. As a result, we get crops for the sake of quantity, not quality. Stores are filled with attractive but practically tasteless fruits and vegetables. Animal food has also changed, since it is raised not on green, lush meadows, but in cramped pens, with the help of antibiotics and growth hormones to get more weight with less cost. But there is another factor that leads to health problems in modern people. This is the myth about the second. In fact, this is a story about how aluminum magnates sold the waste from their industry to millions of people under the guise of medicine. The first claim that fluorides are beneficial for dental health and that they should be added to drinking water to prevent dental diseases was made by a researcher, Dr. Gerald Cox, from the Mellon Institute in Pittsburgh. Cox began his research on fluoride at the suggestion of Francis Frary, the director of the research laboratory of the American aluminum company Mellon Institute. He served as the main defender for all the major companies in the metal processing industry. Unsurprisingly, the proposal originated from a researcher at this particular institute. At that time, during the period from 1956 to 1968, regarding harm caused to health by fluoride alone, more lawsuits were filed in court than for all the other 20 pollutants combined. To somehow protect themselves from such a huge number of lawsuits, they began to promote a theory, supposedly based on real research, which claimed that fluorides are beneficial for health. Another defender of fluoridation was Harold Hodge, one of the most influential and high-ranking doctors and researchers. This man enjoyed unquestionable authority among those in power in the field of healthcare. He published multiple works supporting the water fluoridation program, which was being considered for implementation as early as 1957. And now, attention! Hodge, at the same time, was one of the organizers of an experiment to study the effects of radiation on the health of people who were being vaccinated with plutonium. You might wonder, what's the direct connection? He worked as the chief toxicologist on the Manhattan Project. The goal of this project was to develop the atomic bomb, which was later dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hodge studied the toxicity of all the chemical reagents that were used in the production of the atomic bomb, including fluorides, which were used in large quantities during the creation of the bomb. Hodge was tasked with promoting information that could help the government and the military protect themselves from lawsuits related to causing harm to health. And, on the contrary, all information that could be used against the military had to be removed. After all, if it turned out that water fluoridation was harmful, all organizations working with fluoride, including the Nuclear Energy Commission, the government, and the United States military, would have faced countless lawsuits. At the same time as Hodges, a well-known physician and activist for the fluoridation theory, Dr. Kiko published a major scientific work on the beneficial effects of fluorides. This work was funded by the following organizations: the Aluminum Company of America, the Aluminum Company of Canada, the American Petroleum Institute, DuPont, Kaiser Aluminum, Reynolds Metals, United, and Steel, Inc. The only specialized organization on the list is the National Institute of Dental Research. Kehoe's personal files contain references to his cooperation with the Committee on the Legality of Fluorides, providing them with materials to defend corporations against fluoride-related lawsuits. In addition, selling fluoride to the entire nation was made possible by none other than the legendary father of advertising, Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who was a true evil genius and a professional in creating an attractive image. For harmful products, Edward conducted research on mind control, or more precisely, the control of society. He even published a book called Propaganda. Bernays was involved in popularizing both fluoridation and cigarettes. He was invited to conduct a public relations campaign to sell fluoride to the nation. The plan was to convince dentists that fluoride is beneficial for teeth, and then the dentists themselves would sell fluoride to everyone else. For decades, the benefits of fluoride were promoted among the population, starting from the school bench. Scientists who claimed that instead of being beneficial, fluoride has a strong negative effect on the human body were fired, persecuted, and ridiculed in the press. So people started buying fluoride toothpastes, not because their benefits were proven, but because a lie repeated many times in the form of advertising began to be perceived by many people as the truth. In the 1960s, many other countries followed America's example. But when the side effects of water fluoridation were discovered, most of these countries abandoned such experiments on their citizens. It can be said that now water is fluoridated on a large scale only in America and Ireland. But even there are people fighting against the forced fluoridation of the population. For example, the Irish doctor Don Macaulay says, "I think that many of my colleagues, dentists, simply do not know how dangerous water fluoridation is. They don't know that the fluoride used for this is obtained from toxic waste containing lead and arsenic." The American Dental Association. The consequences of fluoride exposure and causes of fluorosis have been known since at least 2006. But nothing was done to warn the millions of Americans who are poisoning themselves and their children with fluoridated water. In that same 2006, a study by 5 was published, identifying fluoride as a neurotoxic substance that causes severe brain damage. The National Research Council wrote, "It is obvious that fluorides have the potential to interfere with the functions of the brain and body, either directly or indirectly." And at the Food and Drug Administration, sodium fluoride is actually registered as rat poison. At Harvard University, researchers found a link between fluoride and bone cancer. A study published 14 years after it began showed that high rates of osteosarcoma, a deadly form of bone cancer, occur most often among people who drink fluoridated water. Another sign of fluoride poisoning is kidney disease. Several animal studies have shown that even low levels of fluoride can cause kidney damage. It has been found that fluoride interferes with the proper functioning of the thyroid gland and weakens the human endocrine system. Until the 1970s, fluoride was used in Europe, and many experts believe that the widespread hypothyroidism seen today is the result of excessive fluoride consumption. Also, according to research, an excessive amount of this element at the level of the pineal gland leads to serious dysfunctions. Ancient philosophers believed that the pineal gland, the epiphysis, was the seat of the soul. Modern medicine considers the epiphysis to be the central point of interaction between the right and left hemispheres of the brain. In addition, the pineal gland regulates the secretion of melatonin, the hormone of youth. In turn, melatonin is produced by the pineal gland from serotonin, a substance clearly associated with higher cognitive functions in humans. Now let's list the toxic effects of sodium fluoride, which is used for water chlorination and in toothpastes. Most water fluoridation plants use aluminum sulfate and fluorides instead. Both substances, when mixed, form aluminum fluoride. Aluminum is a foreign element for living organisms. It is toxic to the kidneys and is hardly excreted from the body. Accumulating in the brain, it causes Alzheimer's disease, or in Russian, premature senile dementia. Fluoride from drinking water or toothpaste is quickly absorbed into the human body and mostly concentrates in areas where calcium accumulates, in the bones and teeth. Even just 20 to 40 milligrams of fluoride per day inhibits the function of a very important enzyme, phosphatase, which is necessary for calcium metabolism. As a result, fluoride thickens the bones, but makes them brittle and fragile. In the early 1980s, it was discovered that fluoride stimulates bone growth, but at the same time causes bone deformities, including bone spurs and heel spurs. Several studies have linked an increase in hip fractures to fluoride consumption. Data have also been published showing that fluoride inhibits other enzymes at doses lower than those present in drinking water. Some researchers believe that fluorides are carcinogens. The United States Agana National Laboratory published a study in 1988 stating that fluorides turn normal cells into cancer cells. The Japanese Dr. Tsutsui showed that fluorides cause not only the transformation of normal cells into cancer cells, but also genetic damage to cells. That is why it is harmful to pregnant women. Even a government study in the United States, which analyzed 156 cases of death from cancer, concluded that fluoride accumulated in tissues causes cancer and other fatal diseases in one way or another. The scientific work of Dr. Dean Burke, the chief chemist of the National Cancer Center of the United States of America, showed that drinking water and fluoride found in toothpastes directly cause no less than 10,000 cancer deaths per year in the United States of America. Another study showed that the incidence of extremely malignant bone cancer in children, called osteosarcoma, is significantly higher among populations that consume fluoridated water. It turns out that there is no reason to fluoridate water. This is a forced exposure of the entire population to a carcinogenic chemical. But water fluoridation still continues in the largest cities, despite the growing mountain of evidence of its dangers. Who benefits from this? That's a rhetorical question. And despite the fact that water is not fluoridated in Russia, increase your awareness, stay vigilant, and read the ingredients of your toothpastes. In general, take care of yourself. See you on Cremola.